Hey guys, it's Olivie Blake, and this is me not writing. Okay, so once again, I was not at all prepared to film this video, and I'm going to be throwing this together because it's officially summer in terms of like my writing schedule. As you maybe know, Mr. Blake is a teacher, which means that when he is off, I am on. So now he's, primary goblin handmaiden for a while, which means that it's time for me to write my new book. And so that means that every spare minute is devoted to getting words on the page. So stuff like this is gonna like take a back seat. I'll be on social media less, which I'm kind of feeling like I want to be anyway. So I watched Ted Lasso, and I think we can all agree that those of us who watch it anyway, the season was like narratively not fantastic. The character arcs were not very strong and sort of confusing, but I still enjoyed the show every time I was watching it. And I'm finding I'm having this experience that whenever I go on social media, Twitter especially, but also powerfully Instagram, I got some questions about traditional publishing finance. And this is one of my like random other pieces of advice, which is that Instagram is like it feels very deceitful in terms of being like an artist on the internet because Instagram is so visual. There'll be this beautiful picture of your book and it's just going to be like so nice to see it, and you're like, oh, what's the harm in reading the caption? And the caption is like, this is the worst book I've ever read. Yeah, I love being tagged in those. Anyway, that's not important. It's fine. I'm already going off on tangents. I've said this before, but I'm going to keep saying it in case some of you are new here, that I don't read reviews because I think they're for readers. They're not for me. I think you should be allowed to say whatever you want to about my work, but that also doesn't mean that I have to hear it. I think that's fair. That you can hate whatever you want to hate or have criticism, whatever you feel you want to say, and that just doesn't necessarily have to be said like directly to my face, which is why I don't like love being tagged in negative reviews. It's like not my favorite thing. And it happens a lot on Instagram. Anyway, but Twitter, in terms of the actual social media, the algorithm is like so fucked right now. I don't understand. So now there's the following tab, which is only people you follow. But for some reason, it only shows me like 10 people that I follow. And then when I go to the other tab, which shows you like everything, just like every random thing that Twitter thinks you should see, that's when I can see the other people that I follow. But I can also see a bunch of other stuff that I don't want to see. But anyway, the point is, so Ted Lasso, I really like have problems with it, obviously, with like story-wise, with the way that it ended. But like, I love the show and it made me feel really happy watching it. Pretty much like every episode, it was a nice escape and I liked what the show was saying. I really liked the idea that the underlying message is that when you are kind, when you give people emotional space, they become better versions of themselves. So even though I would have maybe changed some of the character arcs, that's something that I really appreciated seeing represented on screen, that like, this is what happens. Like, this is not just this one man's effect, but this is the effect of prioritizing kindness and giving people just the space to emote in general. I think I think it's what it's saying about masculinity and sport is so important. Anyway, and so every time, like the last few days, every time I've been on Twitter, all it will show me are these like, criticisms of the show and stuff. And like, at first I was kind of interested and like sort of thinking about engaging, but then it just made me sad. And I realized like I work too hard for my joy. Like I fight so hard for my joy. It's hard, like, not just from a mood disorder perspective, but certainly from a mood disorder perspective to like be stable or even to just be in the moment. I'm finding that social media like feels like it's bad for the art. Like I feel like it's honestly rewiring my brain in a really bad way. So I might not be on it as much, or I'm going to try not to be on it as much. I have my apps like, muted during the day. But yeah, so I won't be as available, but I'll still be here. And definitely if you do want to reach me, like you have a question or something, Tumblr is honestly the best place. And if you need like a quick response or something, then Twitter, because it's fast. Anyway, so because I'm drafting and I'm a little bit concerned. So my summer is punctuated a few times, more so than it was last year, because I just found out that I get to do some fun events this year. I am going to be at San Diego Comic-Con, which I'm so excited about. I love Comic-Con and I can't wait to be there. And the panels I'm on are amazing. I'm so excited. And Masters of Death also comes out August 8th. So I've got some events. I've got an event in New York the day before it comes out at Strand Books. And then the day after it comes out, I'll be at the Last Bookstore in LA, which is like such an amazing bookstore. I'm so excited. Like just the fact that I heard from the Last Bookstore, amazing. And then I've also got a virtual event August 22nd with Alex E. Harrow, which I'm really excited about. I specifically asked if I could have her as a conversation partner because I really love her and her brain. She's fantastic. And also I want to talk about Starling House, which is a really fantastic cozy-ish gothic with a gorgeous cover. Like so great. Anyway, I've already talked for, like, I get that this is just like my problem. So this just is what it is, and this is what you came for. Let's see, is there anything else I want to say? Yeah, so this might be the only video for the summer unless, like, I don't know, magically I wind up with some time or this book goes faster than I think it's going to or is going to be shorter than I think it's going to. Almost no chance. I'm pretty sure that this book is going to be quite long because it's my first standalone. It's my first new standalone in a while. And it takes place over a very short period of time. So this is Gifted and Talented. It is going to have sort of Atlas 6 vibes. Like in terms of my books, it's going to be most similar to the Atlas 6. But it's inspired by like the Royal Tenenbaums. I really wanted the idea of these, you know, prodigies that are now sort of disasters, and their siblings. And basically they've got all these problems in their personal lives and they've just found out that their father has died. So they have to come home for his funeral. And so, yeah, but because there's 3 like very, very complex plot lines, I have a feeling it's going to be quite long. It's fine. It'll be great. I'm really excited about it though. I've been working on this one like in my head for a while, building up the voice and just really, really looking forward to getting it on the page. I love to write. I love to write. Okay. One of the questions that I had, like I mentioned, was about traditional publishing finances. So we're going to talk about that and then whatever else is in here, which I'm not totally prepared for. Okay, so someone has said, I am so curious about the finances of traditional publishing. Who decides? Okay. Who decides how much each manuscript is worth? When and how do you get paid? Do taxes take up a huge portion of the money? What happens if books don't sell enough copies to earn out in advance? I'm going to answer these in order. Basically, I'll answer these in order. So who decides how much each manuscript is worth is a great question. So when a book goes on sub, which means that your agent has taken your manuscript and submitted it to editors that they think would like it. And then the editors read it. And then the editors have to take it to acquisitions, which is so basically the editor is the first line. That's like if the editor enjoys it and the editor wants to buy it, then they have to take it to the acquisitions department and they determine like whether they could sell this book. So this is why comps are important because so your comp should be a book that has been traditionally published in the last 5 years. And the reason that you want to have that comp is because it helps determine how much acquisitions thinks that book can make. So everything is about how much money you have a product, and everything is about how much money that your publisher thinks they can make off of your book. And then from there, they estimate like a fraction of it is what they give to you and a lot to you as an advance. So I don't know a huge, like acquisitions to me is this sort of like amorphous group of people. And generally like when an editor comes back and gives an offer, all of my books essentially, I have a great home at Tor, so I haven't had to go on sub for a while. But the 2 times that I was on sub, the first time was for My Mechanical Romance, which you might recall was when I was nobody. And the second time was for the Atlas 6. So both times I went on sub, I was offered a preempt, which is basically a short period of time in which you take or leave the offer that they give you. So the only times that you would turn down a preempt is like if you don't think the publisher is the right fit or the editor is the right fit, or you think that you can hold out for more money from a different publisher, things like that. But typically it's this very like abbreviated period of time. And they do try to win you over, and you get all these messages from like usually a bunch of other people who would be on your team have also read the manuscript. It goes through a lot of different people, and you usually hear like a little love note from all of them. But that, yeah. So basically your advance is determined by how much they think, like I said, a fraction of what they think they're going to make on it. And usually advances are paid out in 3 installments. I've heard that it's sometimes 4, but for me, it's always been 3, which is you get a third when you sign the contract, which is not immediate. The contract takes a while to negotiate. So it's not like the day that they offer it to you, that's not the day you get paid. So it's when you sign the contract, then when you transmit the manuscript. So that means you have already done some rounds with your editor and probably your agent. You already done some work on the manuscript, but it has not yet gone to copy edits. Like once it goes to copy edits and beyond, your publisher owns it at that point. So that's transmittal. You get paid at that point, and then you get paid on release day. So a lot of times those 3 payments happen actually in 3 different tax years. So definitely factor that in. So when I sold My Mechanical Romance, I was offered a preempt. They gave me actually a relatively long time. They gave me a week. Priority release, but for a smaller non-Big 5 house, which is great. I loved working with Holiday House. It just depends on what you want for your book. So my advance was about, I think, $35,000, and it was broken up into 3 bits, plus my agent took 15%. So, and that paid out over 3 years. So as you can see, that's a very small amount of money each year. Oh, I'm answering the second question. Great. So when and how do you get paid? I just like to point that out because you want to hold on to about, oh yes. Okay. So when and how do you get paid, and do taxes take up a huge portion of the money? Yes. So, so you want to put aside, just to be safe, like half of what you make for taxes. It's going to end up being more like 30 to 40%, but better to have that money and not have to worry about, doing installments and stuff, because then you don't want that. You have to pay penalties and stuff. So basically, every time you get paid in publishing, you want to put half of it aside. For most authors, like I said, that $35,000 was a small amount of money, and it was broken up into 3 parts. So in terms of annual income, that was not very much, and it was not really worth it for me to have like an S Corp or an LLC or anything like that. At that point, I was just paying taxes as like a freelance individual. And it was fine. The Atlas 6 made a lot more money. I actually can't remember the exact amount, but for all 3 books, it was a 6-figure advance. I made the same amount for the Atlas 6 and the Atlas Paradox, and slightly more for the Atlas Complex. That wasn't a huge jump, but then there was also a massive jump in royalties because of my books going viral. So there was a weird year where I was paying as an individual, which is not like the wisest way to pay your taxes if you make a lot of money as a freelance writer. So at some point it is worth it to transition to like, I'm an S Corp. And so basically like I own the business and I pay myself a salary. So in terms of my personal taxes, I pay taxes on the salary that I make as an employee of the larger business. And then I pay business taxes as well, which is something you would want to talk about with an accountant. Yeah, I feel really weird talking about myself as a commodity, but like the reason that publishing has given me the opportunity to republish my backlist is because the Atlas 6 and Alone with You in the Ether made a lot of money. Thanks for that, by the way. I feel so weird right now. I really don't like talking about money. I don't like thinking about money, but I'm going to answer these questions. Okay, so yeah. So the most important thing that you need to know, like all this other stuff, if you reach a point where you like need financial advice, you should talk to an accountant and not to any writer, because I think that all writers have slightly different careers and things can change really abruptly from year to year. It's very strange and unexpected sometimes in really good ways. But But the most important thing you need to know is put away half of your money for taxes. So what happens if books don't sell enough copies to earn out in advance? Nothing. It just means you don't make any royalties on it. The advance that they give you is based on how much they need in order to make a profit. And once they've made their profits back, like once they've made the money back, then they start paying you. So kind of them. But so you don't ever have to like give back your advance unless you don't fulfill your contract and don't submit your book or whatever. Or I don't know, do something horrifying. But like you don't have to pay your advance back if you don't make enough. You just, it would lead to maybe difficulties in getting a second book published, maybe. But the only like real result is just that we would then not make royalties, which is not that uncommon actually, especially in like literary and stuff like that. Because you're looking at smaller sales numbers overall. But yeah, let's see. Did I skip anything? Yeah, and you don't make royalties on your books until you have earned out your advance. The really important things that I can pull out of this answer is have comps, know how your book would sell. It's important to actually, like, it's good to be able to pitch a book, based on film or TV or whatever, because you can give an idea of what the book is about. But for purposes of publishing and for acquisition specifically, you want to be able to compare your book to a book that has shown some success, because they are only going to be able to value your book based on other books like it that have sold over the past 5 years. And the past 5 years is a significant number because publishing changes a lot. Like, for example, when I wrote Masters of Death, we were totally oversaturated in paranormal romance. So they said no vampires. And now vampires are like having a comeback. And it's only been 5 years. So yeah, these are the things to know. Okay, someone asked me if I'd ever consider pregnancy or birth again. And I would not. I'm not going to talk about it very much, but I want to bring it up because, like, it's very interesting watching all the sort of reproductive arguments that are going on at the moment, the sort of warped perspective of what being pro-choice means, which is just like anti-forcing women to have babies. So I always just want to say I am so happy that I have my son. I love my son so much. And I genuinely enjoy being a mother. I really do. I think I have kind of it's as difficult as it is to be in my position and be a working mother. I do have kind of the best of both worlds in that I spend the day with my son and I am like sort of a stay-at-home mom, but I also have like my art that belongs to me. So I don't feel like me and my identity get swallowed up in the act of motherhood, which I know is the case for a lot of people. So like I still have a very strong sense of self beyond the role of wife and mother because I have my art and I have you guys to talk to about why I like my art so much and that I get to like think and be something that isn't a mother all the time. But at the same time, I really do. I love being a mother. There's this line from Fault Lines by Emily Atami that she says that the idea of getting to spend the whole day with her kids sometimes gives her the feeling like the night before her birthday when she was very small. And I get that. Like sometimes the idea of just having like a day with my son and knowing that it's, we don't have any errands to do and we just get to like hang out and we're going to go to the park and we're going to do something fun. We do, because we have one car. And so every now and then, like one day a week, we drop off Mr. Blake and go and have, like Mr. Blake calls them adventure days. Actually, he calls them mess around days. I call them adventure days. Unlike the day before an adventure day, I feel very excited. However, I have no interest in having more children. I don't think that my brain could handle it. Like I genuinely think that pregnancy almost broke my brain. And like I feel like I narrowly escaped postpartum depression. Like I genuinely think I had postpartum something. I think I had postpartum euphoria, which is a real thing. And like there's so many, like I was really at risk for postpartum psychosis and like I don't really want to roll the dice. And also if I had another child, I really would not be able to do my job. It's hard enough with one child to find the time to write. Like obviously, I'm just telling you about how I have to fill every spare minute. Like my entire life is my son, my writing, and I don't have time for anything else. As much as I love both of those things, I could not then split it myself a third way. It just would not happen. So yeah, like it feels like something to bring up because I also like, I love my son so much and I'm super uninterested in another child. Like, I really think that I would be an unfair mother to them. I don't know that I don't think that I'm capable of not having a favorite child, and I wouldn't want to do that to like another human being. So yeah, I like to bring it up because I think that I've never been more likely to have an abortion than at this point in my life, already having had a child and as a mother and loving being a mother. I would absolutely not have another child, and I think that like my right to not have to be forced through pregnancy, like it is my right. So yeah, that's just something I like to bring up. Okay, so one of these questions, I really love how you explore themes in your work, and I was curious about how you approach themes such as morality. For example, Nobility and the Atlas Six both do it, but in quite different ways. Yeah, okay. So I mean, I think of morality as something that is very dynamic, that it is never absolute. And I actually, like, I think that morality and specifically ethics are something that I talk a lot about in the Atlas series. So, like the way that the Atlas complex concludes, I think has a lot of my more like complete thoughts about what morality means and what it means to participate in like communal morality. Because I think that's the thing is like when I'm looking at morality, it is fluid in the sense that what is the moral choice for this specific situation? It's one of the, like, I actually think that Nobility and the Atlas Six are great examples because they both feature a feminine lead who is very self-interested in a like an ambitious way and also a sort of desperation to prove something about themselves. And so you kind of get, and they're contrasted with women who are arguably better or worse, you know? I think, I guess I specifically like to explore the contrast between morality in women, because I think that women specifically are put in very difficult positions when it comes to morality. Like earlier, I was just talking about the expectations for me as a wife and a mother. Like I really do think that it's very easy to get swallowed up by the sort of saintliness of motherhood and what is right for a woman often involves this self-sacrificing like martyrdom. I think a lot of us have mothers, a lot of us meaning immigrant children, but also women in general, have mothers who were sort of expected to put what they wanted aside in order to prioritize being a wife, being a mother, doing what they had to do because their circumstances were different. And then we are sort of this like more selfish generation because, we were told we had the freedom to have a better life. But that freedom is also restricting in its way because it comes tied to expectations. Yeah, I think that the expectations of a woman are specifically very interesting, which is why, like Libby Rhodes, for example, I went right in always talking about how she's on a corruption arc. And I don't mean that in a girl boss way. I don't mean that in the sense that like she's going to burn down the world because she's a villain and she's going to do it for herself and we're going to cheer her on while she does that. No, I think that Libby Rhodes is specifically on a very challenging journey, and it should, like, I am hoping that the audience does feel some tension over her choices and her actions because it doesn't come from a place of villainy, it comes from a place of being wronged. It comes from a place of wanting more. It looks from certain angles like almost like a self-acceptance arc. But the reason it isn't is because because morality is not absolute, because morality is not any choice that a righteous character makes is a righteous choice. Morality is the right choice is different from moment to moment depending on the context and depending on the ecosystem, the ecosystem that character belongs to. Part of my sort of thesis with all of my work is sort of this idea of how do we belong to this world? What do we owe the world? What does the world owe to us? What do we owe to each other? Normal thought exercise type things. And so I think when I'm playing with morality, it's not, there is no right answer. I'm not trying to like teach anything. I think that with my books, even though I refer to them as allegories all the time, like I'm trying to, but I'm not trying to teach a lesson. I'm trying to plant a question. Like I'm trying to get you to ask yourself a question. And I think that question might vary from audience member to audience member, but it's always this sense of like, what is the right thing to do in this instance, and who is wrong is such an interesting question, because it's very rarely like one person is right and one person is wrong. And adding in that extra layer of like, well, what is usually expected of a woman? What is usually like, what is considered moral by social constructs is different from what is considered moral based on, the actual individual's place in the world. And by that, I mean, it is not fundamentally wrong to be ambitious. It is not fundamentally wrong to choose yourself. But how far does that go? Like, if once you choose yourself, does that mean that every choice thereafter is ethical? I guess the question is, how far do the ripples of that decision go? At what point do you pull yourself back? At what point is it not about you and about others? And I don't, and again, and I don't even, I feel weird, like you're going to have to read the Atlas Complex. Because I'm not saying any of this from I'm not saying it from a philanthropic point of view. I'm not saying we should always act in a certain way for others. I'm not saying we should always act in a certain way at all. That's the whole point. The whole approach of morality is there is not ever and always, and there's never an always, and there's never a never. That the polarities that we think of as morality are more like social constructs. And those things are not excuses. They're just context. And, I am fundamentally interested in what it means to like exist and why are we here and what are we doing here and how do we make something of the time that we have? And I feel like, I've used so much of my life observing injustice and feeling like I want things to be different. And so to ask in fiction, how could things be different? And how are they not different? Yeah, my version of fantasy is never complete escapism. I don't think that like SFF ever is completely divorced from reality. I think it's like a mirror that shows us our reality with like certain things, the volume turned up on certain things. But like specifically, I'm never aiming for escapism. I'm aiming for, okay, we can be really interested in these characters and these people because they're not us and this isn't our life. This is not our lives, It's like, to me, it should always give you the feeling of like binging a reality show where you're like, okay, these characters are interesting and I'm interested in the story. But at the same time, there's this other level of like, well, where are they right and where are they wrong? And that sort of reflection of their moral edges, what does that say about us and the world? Like basically the number one thing that I want to happen with my books. I think there's two layers of enjoyment. That's like, you can enjoy the story and be along for the ride and just be like, that was fun. And then you close the door on the characters and you walk away. Or you can continue to let the sort of thought exercise that I've provided for you. What does intimacy mean? What are we on earth to do? What do ethics even mean? Those things are also there if you have a brain that likes to play with things, which mine does. I've got a very like handsy brain. So anyway, I don't know when I'll be back, but I will be back at some point. Thank you, by the way, to everyone who came to see me on tour. I had such a great time in the UK. I always do. I'm like really particularly obsessed with Bath, which I've been telling people Bath is like the Italy of England, and I'm not sure how to explain that beyond the like Roman presence and also like the constancy of ice cream. Like maybe that's like what Italy means to me. And also Canterbury was so cool. I wish I had spent more time there. It was crazy that it was my last stop and I was like, wait, I just want to walk around. Anyway. Thank you to all of you who came to see me. It is just so fantastic. Thank you to everyone who has read my books. First of all, thank you for letting me live in your brain and ask you difficult questions occasionally or whatever, and tell you stories. And then thank you for that extra layer of coming to hang out with me. It really means a lot. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. And certainly I will be back for Masters of Death. I also have like a ton of books. I need to do a giveaway at some point. If I do, that will be on Instagram most likely. This has been me, Olivie Blake, not writing, and I'll see you next time.